So welcome for today's enablement session, being a transition coach at SAP and helping our new managers to come smoothly in their new roles, supporting them with all the challenges. So we are going through a pretty packed day today, and therefore I will show you the agenda. So we started on time, 9 o'clock. A welcome, we do a little bit of orga and a small warm-up game, and then we go into, like in German it's Zwiegespräch or an interview. Karsten and I, then we have input prepared, we have group works, pretty for 2 hours. Around 12:40 we have lunch for those who need to do calls and stuff like that. Another input session regarding interventions. So here you get the model. Here you get interventions, and we do caseworks in groups. And at the end we will train or try out what we have learned through the day in trial coaching, do some reflections on the day and of what I have learned, and closing with the feedback round, and we will be done by 6 p.m. This is going to be a pretty long day, and I know that some of you need to leave a little earlier. Any questions to our red thread for the day? Good. And of course, when we work together, we also have prepared some rules. So we would like to ask you to turn your mobile devices off, be on time because we have this pretty packed agenda, support each other when it comes to the triad coaching or helping each other because we have more and less experienced coaches. And also everything what we talk in here when it comes to interviews or sharing, for those of you who are manager, we will ask you to share your experiences also, that we keep it confidential. Be self-responsible, so ask the questions you need to ask. Go for a coffee if you need to, whatever. Have fun, that's important. And for everything what we do, so now you are coaches, very experienced ones, and very often, so I experience that myself, I think sitting in a chair, I don't know what I'm going to learn today, maybe I know everything. So, but also for me, let's try out to be on beginner's mind the whole day, so that everything is going to be new to us. Good. Any questions, or is anything missing on the rules chart for you today? Okay, we will also take pictures for the photo minutes. Is it okay for everybody that we take pictures? Get your hair combed? Or does someone want to be on a picture? No. Okay, so we can take pictures also for the photo minutes. Perfect. So Karsten, thanks for being here. And we decided to do an interview with you, or having a little dialogue, because you are experienced being yourself a manager. So you were young, being at Accenture, being, in this coming in this big company, Bombardier Transportation, having this huge budget, 200 people, stuff like that. And I know that you started to get a coach yourself during that phase. So tell us, was it because there were already challenges, or was it because you were thoughtful and thinking ahead, or how did it come that you got a coach? And how many years back was that?
That was back in 2000. And at that time coaching wasn't very prominent. There was, at this company there was no single coach, there was no coaching pool or anything like that. And I got this new position, and being very ambitious, I took it, and all of a sudden I found myself with 12 different nationalities, different suppliers, different vendors, lots of corporate politics, lots of pressure, and I felt, wow, this is a big chance, but this is also a big risk to fail. And so for that reason I asked my manager, can we skip my training budget, but I'd rather use it to have a coach. And at that time I actually made sure that it is absolutely confidential if you look at it compared to today, I charged in the invoices of the coach via my expense report.
Oh, that would be a good idea maybe for SAP too. Okay, so and what difference did that coaching do to your leadership style or being a leader? What was the biggest thing for you?
I think being a first time, I mean, I took like 2 career steps in one. And all of us, I never was a team lead. I became a project manager and a program manager kind of in one go. And I was missing principles, practice, experience. I just did it by gut feeling and a bit of autopilot. And you look around and you see there's a lot of people working hard. So you better work hard. And you would better have a packed agenda. And me, I'm structured, so I overused my strength. And at the end, I had a week that did not have a quarter of an hour left for anything else but meetings. There was no time to strategize or to think outside of the box.
So that was the moment you thought, oh, I need to do something, or was that even before?
That was even before. I just noticed that there was a lot of pressure and criticism. And at the time at this company, I had over 5 years, I had 6 CIOs. I mean, you can see the level of politics going on in that enterprise. And since my budget was kind of the most visible, there was every new CIO would bring a full stop review. What are you doing there? Why are you spending all this money? We need to change this. I want to have my footprint on it, and then you go off again. And to kind of develop the relationships with all these new managers, new CIOs, that was also a big challenge.
And besides the leadership style or your leadership or being a leader, what else has changed through coaching?
I think it's the level of awareness to know when your derailers kick in. So when we get under pressure, we tend to act more on autopilot than on reflective mode. And so when I got under pressure, and when you have a large team, you get under pressure. So it was to have a choice between my autopilot and a behavior that I wanted more. And to be reflective and to have that choice, that was helpful.
So, and I know you work with young managers from business schools. You work also with top managers. So what do you see nowadays? What are the biggest challenges for newly promoted managers, how we call them in SAP, or first level leaders?
I think there are several steps in a career of a manager which can be like pivotal points where you can either succeed or have problems. I think when you become a manager of people for the first time, that's like the biggest change from an individual contributor or a staff or an expert into somebody that is managing people. Maybe then also feeling or thinking what you can influence, and then realizing, oh, I can't influence that much. I'm actually executing, I'm in the middle. And then obviously when you start and when you develop that skill and then you become manager of managers, that's then a totally different thing. You have more experienced people, they are more senior, they want more leeway, they want more freedom, more autonomy. And if you're used to be more in the coaching, guiding, teaching mode, maybe then this can be a bit problematic. And in general, there's this great book from Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I mean, there's typically a point in the career of leaders, I mean, anywhere in their 30s, 40s, 50s, depending on how the career goes, where in the beginning of a career, the focus is on self-promotion. I want to show that I'm good and that I can do it. And at one point, when you have reached a certain level, the career changes to a degree that I need to develop others now. This is now my task, and I get rewarded, I get incentivized for developing others rather than developing myself.
But as a manager, you have to be aware of that. You have to promote other people, not only yourself.
Then all of a sudden the topic of trust and letting control go becomes an issue, because if you're used to be the best in your team, the best expert, then letting go and really not knowing everything, not knowing the solution to everything is a big stress for many people.
And you have worked within SAP also as a coach. Have you worked with first level leaders also?
Typically L1 level. So higher up.
Okay.
But what is your experience with that? I mean,
it's a while back when I had a woman coming back from maternity leave, and she was asked to, she was within a team of 40 and she was asked to be the team lead. And she came back from maternity leave, she took it on, she went on 100%, and she came to me and I asked her, okay, what is your goal for the coaching? And so there was this feeling pretty much insecure, and there were also those traps like working over hours, not spending enough time with the family, after a couple of weeks coming back and saying, okay, my life balance is not working. And I was not experienced working with managers at that time, and so we talked about the framework you are introducing, and I would have been so glad and not feeling insecure as a coach myself if I would have a model like this. Because I myself, I have not been a manager, so I didn't know how it is feeling to be in the shoes of a manager. So I did it by intuition, I read something, but I did not feel 100% okay with my skills. But the coaching went fine, so that was a success. And she does great, so that was cool. And I think, so I'm so many years now with SAP, and I think if we can make it happen that a young manager can take on a coaching, that the transition into the new role, having the awareness of what are the traps, what are the derailers, what does the management really want, and getting the person, the understanding, where do I stand, so we can make a huge difference.
And with that particular client that you were working with, what made the biggest difference to that person?
Finding out that she is okay. Because there was this big stuff with the guilt regarding her family, and also feeling guilty not being enough there for her people in the team, not supporting. So the trap was also, as she came out of this team and leading then this team, she did all the tasks she did before, she did it on top of her management stuff. So, and the learning was more delegating. It's okay that she works over hours sometimes, but it's also okay maybe leaving Fridays earlier. Finding a balance. And also going into a good interaction with her manager. She thought she needs to do everything by her own, because now she's promoted, she has now the stamp, I'm a manager. Now I'm a manager, I need to know how it goes. And she didn't. And knowing, okay, I can ask my manager, I can get a mentor, I can get a coach. So I think that was the best learning.
So she's not alone.
She's not alone.
There's help. And sometimes in coaching we find, or I find that after a year has passed by, they come back and say, there was this one thing that you said that made the big difference to me. Is there anything like that in that case?
It was an intervention, a clear intervention. It's called Future Self. And this is her biggest resource. I mean, we can talk about interventions later on.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And
so
it's
like
still today. We are still in contact. It's still today.
Yeah. I had one case where the biggest learning was the sentence, when you're doing this, what are you not doing? So having an understanding of there's 100%, we tend to talk on, we work 120%. At the end of the day, I mean, for everybody that does math, you work 100%. That by definition, this is what you can work. You cannot work 120, 150% on a continuous basis.
Right.
And having that feeling of there's resources and they are ending, they are scarce, they're not infinite. I think that's also helpful.
And I have another question for you. So what is the biggest trap? When we as coaches, some of the coaches here, they are managers. What is the biggest trap when you coach as a manager, a newly promoted manager? Do you have experience with that? And any guidance for us?
Well, I'll talk about the attitude or the traps in that, but I think in general, in coaching there are traps. And I don't think that the traps here are particularly different. I think it is important that when you want to be of support to the client, you are aware what is your story as a coach and what is the client's story, and you don't mix it. The fact that your career went left and not right means something to you, may not mean a lot to the client. So I'm to be very conscious about this is my story, this is my stuff, and this is the client's stuff. And I think what's also helpful is to be, to a degree, at peace with what you're doing. I mean,
what do you mean?
If I'm not happy with what I'm doing, and I'm feeling discontent
in your work,
in
not
my
being
work,
a coach, in your work,
exactly, in my career, in other terms, then that may influence in one way or the other my ability to be helpful to my client. Yeah. Okay. So, for example, I had one case that's totally unrelated to SAP. One client from the tobacco industry. That's a different case. But since I couldn't be normal, I couldn't be neutral with that, because for me that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I need to disclose that. And I think that's maybe an extra step to be aware of. This is my career. How happy am I with what I'm doing? Can I be of good help for my client?
And in other words, being transparent also with the client. If you cannot deal with the situation, make it transparent as a coach. Yeah. Okay.
So I put together a couple of slides. And this is more meant as a structure. I mean, I'm talking to you as experts in coaching yourself, right? So this is not anything basic. This is just an idea for you that you maybe have a structure in mind, saying, okay, when I'm in transition coaching, certain things are important, and something is maybe different in terms of the proportion of guiding and asking, or in my attitude, and then we have a discussion about it. I would really like to engage you in, making your points, asking questions, and everything. So the question is, what is actually the recipe, the cooking recipe for a successful career transition? Why do some transitions work out fine, and why others don't? And what are kind of the risk factors? So what can you go for in terms of success factors, and what should you avoid in coaching, or when you work with a transitionee, kind of, what kind of risk factors to avoid? So there's resources that are available to you. The first 90 days is a book by Michael Watkins. It's a pretty known book in the international space. Carolyn, where is it available?
We send you a link on soft skill, and then Amazon, of course. And I have talked to Alexandra. Maybe we can order one and have it in our office for you available. But
so soft skill is a PDF, is an ebook.
Yeah.
It's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty easy to read book. When you can read it in, I don't know, an hour or max 2. I mean, then you get definitely the core concept. There's a white paper from the Center for Creative Leadership, Executive Integration, which I think has been sent around to you, which is available. That's another model. So the term that CCL uses is executive integration, which is something like transitioning, something like onboarding. And then there are some elements of resilience that we talk about today. And this is the source or the reference of that is Resilience in der Unternehmensführung, which is a new book that is coming out in this month, actually. So, career transition. If we want to structure the thing, what are career transitions? So, on the one hand side, there is somebody transitioning in from external. And if you look at that, somebody has been hired, maybe through a headhunter. There's hiring costs involved. So there's also a big pot of money at stake. So it's an external hire. Maybe sometimes they come through merger and acquisitions. We work a lot with leadership teams. So sometimes they are kind of the acquisition was a friendly one, was a planned one, was a merger of equals. Sometimes they have been acquired, so there's all kinds of, they used to be competitors and all that different things. Then from internal, I learned in the briefing that there is intentional managers who want to become manager, and then there's incidental managers who actually never planned to be one, but finally found themselves being one, and how to deal with that. Then there is a question of, do you manage teams? So do you manage individual contributors, or do you manage managers, or do you manage a function. That's obviously a huge difference. Then, do you do an upward move? Do you do a lateral move? Is it because of restructuring that you find yourself in a new position? And is it an extension of my responsibilities? So I do what I did before and do something else? Or is it an entirely new role? There's a couple of models from the resources that I quoted earlier. This is from the first 90 days. And that is, I found this an interesting concept to think about. When you join as a new manager, say through restructuring, you come into a new team, the first thing that you do is you absorb energy. So your contribution, if it is a new role, you need to learn the ropes, you need to learn the stakeholders, you need to understand maybe the politics, the dynamics, the product, the technology. So there is an element of value that you consume, actually. And that, if you think about it, makes kind of sense. Then there is, somebody else needs to explain it to you. That's the buddy, the onboarding, or the boss. And then there is an element of where you're getting net neutral, and then comes the value that you actually are able to create, which as a manager hopefully is larger as the amount of energy that you have consumed initially. However, there are also a lot of dropouts and flaws in these transitions where things go wrong, where people don't get the traction, that they need, and there's problems because of all sorts of reasons. And actually, if you look at the literature, the numbers are pretty stunning. So, if it is 38%, but somewhere between 30-something and 40-something%, that's a pretty large number of transitions that are not optimal or even lead to a premature exit or a not successful transition. And I think the numbers, from my experience, the numbers go higher the more you talk from external. Yeah, so the more somebody comes in, has no network, comes from a different culture, I think the numbers actually are even higher than 50%. If you look at upper management and you look at your recent transitions and you look at 24 months after the transition, who from senior management is still in the company, sometimes that's wanted, sometimes it's not wanted. The break-even point in that book was defined or is defined as when the value created starts to become equal to the value that you have consumed in transition. And 6.2 months if it is 0.2, but half a year, more or less. So the message here is that it takes, in a normal or average case, it takes about half a year before somebody can be called truly productive. Yeah, if you take that equation into mind. And I think ask yourself, from the perception that one has is, we all think that a transition has to go much faster. Yeah? So maybe a month or two, something like that. In 6 months, companies claim to have integrated another culture of another company. If you think about that, that seems kind of hard to do if a transition already takes half a year. Food for thought. And you can see the sources there. So why do transitions fail? So that's pretty much also my experience. So unrealistic expectations, both from the receiving organization, but also from the manager. Then personal derailers. So when you are under stress, we all have our derailers, me as well. When we get under stress, we all tend to run on autopilot. And autopilot means there are some elements in the personality that can lead us to derail. So some people get overly accurate, pedantic. Some people get overly fast. Some people get overly excited. Some people get choleric, moody, all different things. And that can kick in. Corporate politics, when you can find yourself, you thought everything is fine, you got a great briefing, you find yourself all of a sudden in the middle of the stools, and it's not your fault, it just so happens. That's another thing when you work with more upper managers. In many cases, they experience, I just was working with the CEO yesterday, and he told me, I was thrown off the horse 3 times in my career. And with all reflections, a large degree of that being thrown off was coincidental. It just so happened. It was the wrong chemistry, it was the wrong timing, it was the strategy of the company had changed, this element got divested, or this company got divested. It so happened. So there's always an element of risk when you change, we all know that. And that's normal. The more you become a manager, the more normal is it to kind of reboot and see, okay, this is not working, where else? Yeah. Cultural gaps, when you acquire companies, and all of a sudden, yes, this is IT, but then again, it's not exactly the same, and it feels different, and they are used to work differently. So how to be aware of that? That's not so easy. Missing chemistry, you just find out that you hate your boss. It's possible, right? You just don't get along. Or your colleagues having some wrong assumptions, so that you get promised something in the onboarding process, and then you ask for it to realize, and then you find out, oh, it was not exactly a promise, it was more a option, yeah? And then you have to learn it kind of the hard way. Missing support, and that can even turn out into hostile environment, not welcoming environment. And so, these are the things that really can go wrong, and that it is important to watch out for. And the earlier you watch out for them, the better you can either influence the decision if you want to change and if you want to embark on this risk, or you can maybe build some mitigations, what to do with them. All right. So when you kind of deconstruct how does a successful transition look like, you find out that actually it requires focus areas, different focus areas that are kind of counterintuitive, and that's important. So the first one is actually develop a relationship with your boss. If it's a new boss, get airtime, try to understand the agenda. What does he or she really want to achieve? What's the motivators? What drives that person? The better you know your boss, or the better your coachee knows his or her boss, the better they can read and predict behavior. Yeah? And the less prone they are of hitting a wall flat. The other one is obviously develop relationships with your team. And that's the same thing. Try to understand where they are, what drives them and everything. By the way, you get all the slides. I see you making notes, that's great, but you will get the slides. And then also, what is your attitude? There's the one extreme, which is, I'm now the boss. It's all about me. I tell you what to do. Or, and this is something that I actually experience more often with first-time managers, I am your servant. What do you need? What do you need to perform? How can I support you? And both in the extreme way can be very stressful at the end and can create some sorts of trouble. So it's a good mix of demanding and supporting, and what is the posture, the leadership posture that person has or is choosing for him. And then also obviously having a thought about, is this the dream team that I want to work with? And if it is not, what do I need to do to change it? What can I do to change it? My experience is that when people come in a new team and they kind of get a belly feeling about the persons that are in the team, and they make a team decision to let somebody go or have him move somebody else, normally it's done too late. It's done too late, and they have spoiled maybe a year with trying to fix something that at the end they had the belly feeling right in the beginning this will not work out. But because we are maybe have a humanistic mindset, a value set, we always try to give a chance, but at the end, that's the consistent feedback I'm getting. Karsten, I should have let that person go a year earlier because I actually knew it. And so I went along with a suboptimal team for maybe 18 months and I could save some time there. But on the other hand, this is kind of tough because you can be wrong. Your gut feeling could be totally wrong. And how do you know? Where do you get the self-confidence that you can trust your gut feeling? And having somebody to help you reflect upon this is actually crucial. Then obviously develop relationship with peers. So what is there? Where are coalitions? What is the power play? Who is networking with whom? Who is going to lunch with whom? In a virtual world, who is having Skypes with whom? Yeah. So where's that informal stuff? How can you link into networks? How can you promote yourself? Where can you form a common agenda? Who has the same interests? Do you actually have touch points with your colleagues, or is the only common denominator that you have the same boss? And what to do then? Maybe there's somebody that is not your direct peer because of the same boss, but maybe in another team that can be helpful for you. So trying to build alliances. And, that networking thing is also something that we always work on. Networking is, sometimes has a better reputation. You want to utilize others, you want to manipulate others. And normally when you start networking, when you need it, it's way too late. So either you have developed a network, and that starts with giving. Networking starts with giving, doing others a favor, not with asking. And that's also a mindset thing. And normally when people come to us in coaching and say, yeah, I'm in this position now that I've maneuvered myself into, and we do a stakeholder analysis, we find out that 50% of the stakeholders that are very important, they have no relationship to. Well, what are you going to do there in the next couple of months to develop one? That's not easy. Yeah? So that's also something that we work on. We talked about mental readiness. So another element is really get yourself mentally ready. This is a new role. What kind of skills are needed in my new role? And what skills or experience do I actually bring to the table? And also in many cases, you get the new role before you can exit the old role. At least that's my experience. Maybe that's totally different in SAP. But there is normally a period where you do both. And since you know the old one better, there is a tendency and also an honor thing to say, I will complete my old role. And so I'm not there for the new role. And in many cases, this is harmful. Because everybody knows that you're gone. By the time that it's decided that you're gone, you're a lame duck. You don't decide much anymore. But the new role, that's actually the new thing that's important. So the switching actively the focus and making this transparent, this is also a key thing. And then you will hear me talking about leadership posture. This is, what do I stand for? What do I want to be as a leader, as a manager? What are my values? All of that, to make an active choice about that. And then obviously survive the entire thing. Maintain your resilience. It's a stressful period. There's uncertainty involved. There's maybe fears involved. You know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. How do you make yourself comfortable with that? And then obviously understand the environment. I mean, this is a new environment. It has maybe entirely different rules of the game than we were used to. And really making yourself actively aware that this is about learning now. It is not about knowing. And to really have that open mind. Okay, so what is the role of us coaches in that? I think in general, this is pretty much a normal coaching engagement. But for those who can't see that, this is a mirror with a swan, and there's a little duck, a little ugly duck, looking into the mirror. So the one thing is, enable your client to see himself or herself with the true potential that they have. My personal opinion is that your client is not the person that is sitting in the chair opposite to you. It is the potential of that client. That's your client. And that means you need to be able to see what they are capable of. Net of their fears, net of their self-doubts and all of that. So really to see what is in there. And for that, this is a lake in the mountains. For that, it is good to be at peace with yourself. to be at, I'm okay with what I am. I'm the supporter of that particular person, but for me, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I believe when there's a lot of stuff going in, you're churning about your own career, about your own positioning. I think that is hard to leave that outside of your coaching. And then I think there is an element of being a guide. Yeah, so there is some rules that can be followed in a transition that are kind of general, and these rules, if you know them, it's definitely better than not knowing them. So I would say in transition coaching, there's always an element of asking powerful questions, but there's also an element of knowing what are the dynamics of changing roles and to know what to do when and what to engage when. And then finally, and this is my strongest learning I had, is when you coach, there's always an intrinsic risk that you share the same blind spot as your coachee has. So when your coachee has a blind spot and they don't smell a conflict, they don't smell they are sitting between the stools, how do you know? I mean, yes, there's intuition and everything, but at the end of the day, we are all humans. There's all limited, radar capacity available. And I had a situation where I was working with somebody in transition to board, actually, and that particular person was not seeing one area of criticism. And that almost costed him his career. And I was pretty shocked seeing, wow, we never talked about that one. How come? So there's always an element of where do you get external data points that give you an outside view of how's the client, how's your coachee perceived in their new role or in their old role, and we will also talk about that, how to do that. So this probing of what the client is seeing for themselves, is that also what the environment is seeing? That can be entirely different, actually. Does that make sense to you? I mean, is any, yeah? All right. So a framework. And this is a framework. I'm not saying this is the framework. There's a CCL one. There's one in the 90 days. I think this is easier. I like it because it's easy. I can explain it pretty fast. So this is the foundation of our coaching model. It has 4 different steps. The first one starts with awareness. What's going on? What's the environment? What is my particular positioning? Where do I stand? What are my derailers? What is my personality? All of that is awareness. Then plan is, what do I want to achieve? When do I want to achieve it? What is the support that I need? What do I need to do with my team? Which kind of relationships do I need to develop? All of that. And then, and this is the stuff I like most, choice points. What kind of choices do I have to make? When you do something, you need to let go of something else. When you choose to go into a conflict, there's a choice. You're not the victim. So how can you make sure that people are standing behind their decisions and that they're getting awareness about, I'm taking a conscious decision and it is not coincidental. So choice points is very important. And then integration is getting the rubber on the road. I mean, making sure the stuff happens and that you follow through and that you do actions and that you as a coach are kind of the gatekeeper of saying, hey, we agreed on, you talked to your boss, did you? And why not? What stopped you? What's going on, really? And this is then like a circle that goes through in each session that you work, but also for the entire coaching process. So, what is the situation in terms of what are my skills? What is needed? And then also, what kind of situation is the business in that I'm getting into? Is that a growing business? Is it a declining business? Is it a troubled business? What kind of situation is it? It is not the same behavior that is required of a manager depending on the business situation. Who are my stakeholders? What are the politics going on? Being really aware of that. What is the culture? How can I actually describe the culture? What is my value set? What are corporate or team value sets? How can I make sense of that? Who are actually my clients? Who are my customers? Who is defining my success? Also key. Then the planning phase. What do I want to achieve? And we suggest to be very, very tangible about that. 30 days, 1 month. 60 days, 2 months. 90 days, 3 months. And then maybe a year. And then also thinking about what can be quick wins. Where can you show that you're adding value pretty early on? What are low-hanging fruits? I mean, all these buzzwords. Where can you make sure that, okay, this is something that's going to happen anyway, but I can label it, this is mine. I mean, we all know how that works, right? So how can I make sure that, hey, I'm there, you can notice it. Yeah, it's going in the right direction. But the question is, what do you focus on? And this is not just business results. It is really about relationships. It's what do you need to learn? What do you need to understand? What kind of decisions or changes do you need to make consciously? In what time frame? And business results. And when you do a 90 days plan and you embark into backward planning, you notice that, oh gosh, there's actually a lot of stuff that I need to do right now. And you cannot launch 5 strategic initiatives at the same time that will yield results only in 2 years' time. You need to have something for the next quarter. Yeah, so how do you mix your attention? How do you have the right mix of activities that there's something for next year, but there's something also for this year, and maybe for the next quarter there's also something. Choice points. What decisions do I have to make regarding my mental readiness? So am I ready for the new role? Is my mind clear and free? Who do I want to be? What do I want to stand for as a manager, as a leader? What should people be saying about me? And then also asking the question, why actually should anybody be led by you? That's also a fun question. And then, well, yes, because I'm the boss. Okay, take this aside. Anything else? That's a very interesting dialogue to have with them. What is my strategy? How do I want to attack things? So not being reactive and doing what you're told from above, but really, what is your own strategy? What do you want to bring to the party? Who can support you? What makes you resilient? How can you survive in all of that? And then the execution phase. The learning curve, the building relationships, to secure all of that and to really watch out for. So this is the framework for today. And the nice thing about this framework is all of your interventions that you know, they nicely fit in one of the 4. Yeah? And you can take any other framework, probably. You can do this with GROW, you can do that with ACSR, which is the framework of CCL, or whatever other framework you know, but this gives you a first ability to sort stuff. Okay. So we kind of worked around this model, and just as a recap, and when we synthesize what was said in the 5 groups, so I think reflection was one point. That is something that would have helped. A system check, something what's going on outside of me, outside of my own interest. Then maybe a reflection about how do I want to lead? What are the corporate principles? How do I fit into those principles? Is my leader following those principles, or is there a totally different agenda? And how do I behave in this field where there's tension? How do I position myself? I think this is a good framework for that. So there's a lot of that in the awareness phase, which is really the what's going on. And there, I think it's really like being a detective or like a radar that is trying to screen as much as possible the environment, but also the internal view of the client. Then we have the plan phase. What do I want to do? Then we have the choice points. This is really the coaching piece, I find. So where do I want to make a decision? For a decision could be, for example, the SAP principles and passions look like this. My manager behaves like that. My customers want that. What do I do? That's a choice that I have to make, actually, yeah, in order to be successful in that. And how do I execute all of that? And now, the next step is to really, there's so many interventions that you all know, okay? So I'm not going to repeat kind of the basic coaching interventions. And this is more also a discussion. This is stuff that I use or that we use in our company. Doesn't mean that there's not many other good stuff out there that you can use that fits the purpose or something that you are inventing on the fly. personally, I think interventions are crutches. It's not a means to an end. So when you invent the intervention that is just the right intervention for this coachee in this moment, this is just as perfect. Yeah, but before you do that, maybe it is helpful to use them, you know, to walk along and use them as a job aid if you want. So, and there's different interventions to different phases. The first intervention is called business diagnosis, and this is something out of the 90 Days book. And I'll talk about that. This is really a conscious thinking about, I'm a new manager of a department, large or small. What is the situation? What is the business situation that this department is currently in? And the model suggests that depending on the business situation, I may have different time allotments regarding how much do I want to understand and ask, and how much do I want to assume and do, and how much risk do I take, am I more aggressive or more defensive? And we'll come to that. The other one, the leadership analysis, this is the model that actually, no, I'll go to them one by one. So, and then SWOT analysis and stakeholder map before I explain them without the slides. Okay, so let's dive right into them after having gone through all the others. So, this is the plan, the quick wins, and then also plan your dream team. So what do you want to do to get your dream team? What is the leadership posture, resource inventory, where do you get resources? What are critical leader relationships? That's a term out of research. Talks about the higher you get in a hierarchy, the less normal it is to have trustful relationships, where you're not playing a role, where you're authentic. And it is an effort, a conscious effort to nurture those. And that is also something that we as coaches can help the client with. And then on the integration side, transitional review, so how is it going? Maybe also use the coach, us, for stakeholder interviews. So how is this particular manager doing? How is he or she perceived? If that is okay and culturally, you know, doable in that politically. And then also in the zone, meaning getting an understanding of where am I energy-wise? What do I need to do in order to manage my energy level? So this is the idea. These are the interventions that we are going through today. And after lunch, we will have the chance to say, maybe if you say, that's interesting, I didn't fully get the concept, we can maybe do a little demo of one or two of them. Not all, but one or two. It's more important to get you going and that you get the idea what it is all about, and then you make it your own and you will tweak it, and that's perfect. All right. So, diving into those, business diagnosis, leadership analysis, SWOT, and stakeholder map. So, the first one is the business diagnosis and what kind of challenge am I getting into? And this is kind of the summary of the book, if you want. There's 4 business situations that have different characteristics and different challenges. And the first one is startup. So startup in an SAP context could be a new product, a new program, a new market, a new project. Anything that is new, where there's no pre-existing structures, okay? And the challenge is that there are no pre-existing structures. So you have to invent everything by yourself. So not much is defined. There's not much history. That means that there's also not much that you have to understand in terms of history. Yeah? Maybe, of course, why is there the need to have that product? Why is the need to have that project? But in that situation, success has to do with delivery. Getting stuff off the ground, getting stuff mobilized. Doing a mistake is not so much of a problem, but it is more a problem to analyze and ponder and think over it again and not doing anything. It's a hypothesis. I'm not saying that this is 100% right in all cases. Turnaround. Turnaround is defined as a unit, like a team, project team, product team, market team, that is in visible trouble, and everybody is in agreement that there is trouble. Okay? And the model says that in that particular situation, there's an emphasis on speed, not so much on necessarily understanding, but really making sure that you stop the bleeding. Then if you are in medicine, there is like the ambulance that comes to an accident, and there is the one where you do the rehab and all the treatment, and then there's maybe even cosmetic stuff. So this is definitely the ambulance. Yeah, this is about surviving. Yeah, making sure that this unit survives. Realignment. This is the phase where, in this situation, the business is in trouble. These people that have a bit more oversight or see the history, see a bigger picture, see the figures, and extrapolate what is happening, they see that this unit is going to be in trouble. But the people in the team or around, the stakeholders, they don't see it. They work, and this is actually the most frequent situation where somebody believes there's a problem and others say, well, we're doing fine, don't worry, it will all be fine. And having that discussion can be very, very helpful. And then the last one is sustaining success. Sustaining success is actually also a very tough situation because everything is fine, meaning from here on it can only go down. Yeah? So if you're the new manager in that situation, the only thing that you don't want to do is to confuse people or change too much because everything is fine. Just keep on going. And here the trap is, if you're a new manager, you obviously want to create an imprint saying, I was there, I changed everything. When you are in this mode, you better don't. Yeah? You just better accept that somebody else built this thing, and let's honor that person, and I'll just continue, and that is fine. But there's a temptation to say, I made it even better. And again, this is a structure for having a meaningful conversation rather than saying this is what it is. So what this model says is when you are in the realignment phase, it's a lot about understanding, observing, learning, and it's a lot about, okay, how do I get innovation into this unit? How do I get new ideas? How can I make sure that something that is kind of stiff gets mobilized again? How do I get energy into this unit? Yeah, so offensive in the sense of growing, vitalizing. Startup, there's not much history there, so just get going. Yeah? Have a discussion about what needs to be done now, and it's a lot about speed. It's a lot about assumption. You can be wrong, but then just do it again. But this is the way it goes. Turnaround is a lot about defensive, meaning cutting down to the core. What is really the core? What are we doing that is not core? Make sure that this core survives, and getting everybody on board. And there, in this model, speed is key. Yeah, if you're, turnaround is, for example, a burning house, and you got the fire brigade. They won't start arguing what to do next. They won't have a circle of chairs and say what they feel. They need to extinguish the fire. Right? So this is a different thing. And here in sustaining success, it's very much about what's going on, what has made this unit successful, what are the recipes, and how can I do more of that, and how can I gradually get to the next level? How can I take it to the next level without inducing too much change, without creating too much confusion. And many times, I'm not sure what you notice, but many times this works fine, because everybody's in agreement, something needs to be done. But there's oftentimes a confusion between realignment and turnaround. So that people come and or even sustaining success and turnaround. So even though the business figures are good, the unit is successful, there is a tendency to really make an imprint, to show that you are there, and that you create changes for the sake of change. And if you do that, you just destroy focus. And I'm not, and I think having a discussion about this model and And maybe having a flip chart, you draw this and you say, okay, tell me about your responsibilities, and let's discuss which of your responsibilities sits where. And then see what happens, and then confront them with this paradigm, which is at least worth thinking about, and then see what does that mean for that particular business situation. What I like about this is not just what does my boss want, what does the environment want, it is also focusing on the business dynamics. And it is also looking at my own survival. Meaning, if I'm in a unit that is actually going downhill, and I misread this as everything is fine, kind of, I have enough time, then this can be a big mistake. If I enter a unit that is successful and I want to change everything without thinking about it, just because I feel different is better, may also not be very wise or healthy for my career. All right. The next one is kind of inspired by the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the idea behind that is a manager's career has a certain trajectory, if you want. You climb, eventually you plateau, and then you either retire, or you climb back up, or you have a reboot of your career, or. Different things. And the key statement is that for those that make it far, and want to make it far, there's typically at least once a point in their career where they find out that, oh, I've used this skill till here. Continuing to use that skill will not bring me further. It will lead me into burnout or whatever. For example, if I'm the best expert in my team, and I define myself, my right to lead by being the best expert in my team, and I get on board the next team, and the next team, and the next team, then all of a sudden, this is kind of stressful because, hey, you need to learn a lot all of a sudden. And maybe then you have wrong discussions, you don't trust, people don't feel empowered, and not being able to build a strong team is the #1 reasons of managers to fail. So this is really a framework, it's a bit saying too much, but this is a structure of having a discussion. Where are you now? What are the steps in your career that brought you here? And what are the kind of skills that you collected on the way? For example, being decisive, or being expert, knowing the market, being good with clients, being good in presentations. That's great. And then having a discussion, okay, what do you want? Not everybody wants to make it to the top. Actually, nowadays, more and more people don't want to make it to the top because they maybe think it's not healthy. But the question is, what do you want to achieve? So how high do you want to make it? And what is the stuff that you will need? So that also induces the idea of you can actually design what you want, and you can design what you need. It's a choice. If you have two extreme cases, I find the one extreme case would be somebody that wants to make it very, very far for the sake of making it very, very far, and then you can use this to have a good discussion. What are the skills that you may be missing? And in one situation, I had, I think from now on, empathy is going to be important. Okay, great. So let's talk about empathy. Or in other cases, you have people that actually have a high potential to lead, but don't want to lead because they don't want the responsibility, the stress, and everything that comes with it. And you can use it to have a discussion. Okay, fine. So what's there between black and white? Can you imagine any shades of gray that you want to achieve, where you want to lead, where you want to have an influence? And also, and here I'm referring to the mirror where you see the swan and there's this ugly little duck in front. So what is the potential that you have in front of you? And what's also interesting, obviously, this is not something that is by any means static, right? At the end, if you do this a year from now, the picture might be entirely different, and you may have different experience. You have come to the conclusion, well, actually, I didn't want to lead, but now that I see who else takes leadership roles, maybe I change my decision. Or you have been into the manager role for a year, and you find yourself saying, you know what, I don't want it anymore. Fine. This is just one means of discussing that. And the next one, that goes quick because you all know it in your daily life. depending on how you frame a SWOT analysis, I thought, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threat, I thought is daily business. So the question is, I can use this as a means of awareness, another means of awareness, and the question is, how do I frame the questions? I can frame it as, I can use it unframed, and then normally in my experience the answer is rather shallow. Yeah, it's not deep thinking. Strength. Have lots of energy. Weakness. I talk a lot. Opportunities. I can become a manager. Threat. I can be fired. That's a bit shallow. But if you put it in terms of culture or value, so what of your values can be a strength? What of your values can come in your way? Or what of the company culture can be an asset for you, and what of the company culture can be something that you really don't like, or that you really have a problem with, what can suck out energy, then it becomes deep. Yeah? So the tool itself, especially because people tend to know it, you normally need to put energy in so that it gets really meaningful, is my experience. That's pretty straightforward, right? No need to discuss it any further, I think. So, and then obviously what is internal, what is external, what is helpful, what is harmful, this is the structure of it. And then last one, and I think I heard it, system check. I think you mentioned it, system check. I think this goes in very much in the same direction. So if that's me is the manager. What's my environment? Yeah, and so what you use this for is obviously, and the systemic ones here will know that by heart. What are the relationships? What are the links? And where are the links strong? Where are they weak? Where are they non-existing? And where are they troubled? Yeah, and out of that, once you have that discussion, you can then embark into a discussion. Okay, where do you want to change? Where do you make a conscious decision to invest into a particular relationship, to get it to a different quality? What will help you in a year or two from now? And how do you actually build a relationship? Going out to lunch is a start, but what to talk about, or how to engage. Sometimes this is a problem for people. It's not always easy. Yeah, sometimes when you have something where you have a touch point, it's way easier to build a relationship than if you have just maybe a common interest that you don't even know about. How to do that. And use all the interventions, that we discussed, like the values, what's on your tombstone, what's your retirement speech. All of that are indication to find out some elements on the awareness side. Now, after discussing also like business diagnosis, so what's going on in the business, what's going on in your environment, to have an awareness about there is something like a 90 days period. And we all know that this is a concept. But what it says is, rather sooner than later, make sure that you're making some fundamental decisions or you're building some fundamental networks. It is not something that you can procrastinate on or that you just stroll along and you see what develops. It is something that is worth actually actively pursuing. And so something that we use is a matrix, and the questions are educational. It is really, you can make it fit to all what you do, but I think when you are in a new role, it's important to foster the mindset of learning. So the first question is, in which period do you want to learn what? And then obviously, there's that one group said, you don't know what you don't know. So the more you have that mindset of learning and to talking to people and get an outside perspective and really have like the full spectrum of opinions, that gives you a great degree of what's really going on. So maybe I make a decision to say, I want to learn what are the motives of each of my team members. What are the drivers? Or what do they like about this company? What do they like about the role? What's their family situation? In terms of, is there anything going on that I should maybe know why they have to leave early sometimes. That can be a decision. And for some managers, this is the most natural thing in the world. And for others, this is really hard work because it's not their nature at all. Yeah, if I'm focusing on facts and subjects and expertise, why should I bother what my people want? Then the next one is going back to also what one of the groups said. 1/3 was working on strategy, 2/3 work on your survival, meaning working on sustaining your relationships, your quick wins and everything. So what are the relationships that I have to build? Imagine you, because of a restructuring, you change the board area, all of a sudden your entire line upwards has changed. So what kind of relationships do you need to develop? How can you do that? What is a good way of getting airtime, of getting exposure? Would it make sense to be part in a strategic project that gives you some sort of exposure? Would it be reasonable to be, I don't know, to raise your hand for business trips to Palo Alto because your stakeholders are sitting there and it would make sense to spend time with them face to face? I mean, all of that are ways of thinking. How can you engage in building relationships that make sense for you, that are important for you? Because at the end of the day, even if we are in IT or if we're in products or even if we're in heavy industry, at the end of the day, it is trust. Is that a person I can trust? And that feeling is important. Then, sometimes depending on the business situations, there are decisions over you. So you inherit a team in whatever way, shape or form, and there are decisions overdue. Something has been promised, has never been capitalized on, or something is pending, like a new organization, a new structure, a new plan, a new process. What do I need to decide by when, and where do I, maybe need more time in order to study it? Depending on the business situation, is this a situation where I'm actually in sustaining success mode? And then, do I really want to change something? And is there a risk that I'm defocusing my organization? Or am I in turnaround and I really need to make fundamental changes next week, or better this week, so that we're stopping the bleeding or we stop falling? Then what am I measured upon, and how do I make sure I can achieve it? In some managers, there's no way in hell that they can achieve their results. And for others, it is actually known in the beginning of the year that they will reach their results. And you have both. Yeah? And so the question is, okay, when you know that you reach your numbers, and you know that you can reach it with 70%, what's good use of the other 30%? In the others, you have an impossible goal. How can you manage expectations? How can you send messages? How can you create an impression that, okay, you tried it and you didn't reach 100%, you reached 70%, and that's a success? How can you plant that seed? Yeah? My experience, and I'm interested to hear your views on that, my experience is the more high you climb in the hierarchy, the more you get impossible goals. Goals that are not possible to achieve. And then the quick wins. When I was first time a manager, that was something that kind of drives me nuts, like, quick wins, stop, are you kidding me? But this is really, there's a lot of impatience. Maybe the position has been vacant, everybody has been waiting for you, you are labeled as the savior, or your client, and you come in and everybody says, yeah, now everything will be fine. Yeah? And then you have to manage these expectations, but on the other hand also, your client needs to make sure that, yeah, there's something that I can label as some sort of quick win that I've implemented. All right, so I think that is kind of self-explanatory. That's something that you all can do. It's just another structure for a meaningful discussion. And something that you can give as a homework. And maybe then you can use it to check back what's been going on with your coachee and make sure it's not too shallow. And make sure that there's no blind spots as good as possible. And there obviously it helps to have been in the manager position and remember that framework saying, relationship to boss, what's going on, relationship to peers, to your customers, to your environment? Have you considered all of that? I think that's just helpful structure to make sure that you don't forget anything. All right, and then obviously, all very ambitious, well, many of them very ambitious people. And then you find a list where you say, well, I get a burnout when I just read this. Yeah? So next thing is that actually real? Yeah? Is that something that is doable? Or what is really important? What's the prior one? What is prior two? And how can I put that on the timeline? Maybe. Yeah? Is there something that I need to intervene as a coach in order to protect the coachee from himself or herself? As I said, I observe two extremes. One is, I'm stereotyping here now. One extreme is, I'm the new manager of a team, and I'm very much proud of who I am, and I know it all, I've thought it through, and here I am, and I talk to my team. And the other extreme is, I'm trying to please everybody in my team. And both are traps. And the truth is probably somewhere in between. And one of the points that we also have is a discussion about, you know your team now, from the belly feeling, how much is that your dream team? How much can you achieve what you want to achieve? How much can you have the impact that you want to have with that team? And there's a 9-box grid. Another one. And this is about, if you map all your people, performance, potential. So where does everybody stand? And so here's another color coding. This time it has meaning, and I hope the right one. So this is, and you can debate the model, no question about that. You can also get rid of all the labels. This is just from the source. This is how it is originally labeled. And so if I have somebody with low performance but a high potential, then it would be worth investing. Do I need to spend more time? Do they need coaching? Do they need training? Is there something going on in the private life? If there's somebody that has a high performance, but I don't see a lot of potential in a particular person, what do I do with that person? That's a very solid performer, might be a foundation of my team, but maybe not the right one for my succession planning for the next step. Yeah? And this is another structure, another model, if you want to structure your thinking of who do I have in my team, and who can make which development. Yeah? And normally potential is something that is, this is not exact science here. Potential is something that is kind of fixed, whereas performance is volatile, depending on how much you invest in the person, how much training they have, how much coaching they get from you, how much support they get from you, how much you believe in them, and how much you show them that you believe in them. That can influence performance to a large degree. Potential, in theory, in practice I think it can be influenced, but in theory is a bit more static. Yeah. So, leadership posture. Leadership posture for me really is more a collection of interventions than one intervention. And this is not the normal SAP outfit, I'm aware of that, but just make an equivalent of what is normal. And so this is really a reflection about what am I setting myself up to be. It's easy to say, my boss is stupid, ignorant, narcissistic, but now you are the boss, or your coachee is the boss, and what do you want to be? And given on what you know about your personality, given that what you know about your derailers, given what you know about your autopilot, how easy will that be? Where are potential traps? What will be easy for you? What will be difficult for you? So values, we touched upon values. That's one thing. What are the values that are driving your behavior? and Oliver was it, right? No. We talked in the break that there's obviously also a dark side of all of that. So where's the point where I have to say, this is against my values. I'm maybe not willing to do that. I may feel the need to oppose, stand up, be unpopular, take a risk. And in my experience, that's what makes great leaders. And sometimes that even leads to that your career gets a detour. Yeah, and that's also fine, depending on the values. And I think the important thing is that to be always clear, it is about the values of the client. And sometimes when they're very different from your own values, that's not so easy. At least I observe that. When the values of the client are very different from my values, then it's for me really a conscious effort to really stick with that value system and not introduce my value system all the time. To be cognizant about that, and also maybe have a thinking about what are the values of your boss, what are the values of your peers, what are the values of your people. So that's a language. Values is really a language that you can use in all sorts of dimensions. Beliefs. So that's one of my personal favorites. That's really something I do in every coaching, is what is your fundamental beliefs about life? And what kind of driver is that for you? So the idea of beliefs is implemented in many different schools of thoughts, transaction analysis, for example, or Gestalt, where this is something that is like deeply ingrained from our childhood, a decision that we as kids or our clients as kids, as youngsters have done about life. What is a suitable strategy to cope with the system I'm growing up in? And that the problem with that belief is that it kind of runs in perpetuity in the back of our mind without our consciousness. And when I have the belief I need to be fast, then it's very likely that this particular person is fast with everything. Fast learner, fast thinker, fast decider, very decisive, maybe too fast for his or her people. Or if I need to be safe, yeah, I always need to be safe, then this also drives my behavior. I always maybe have the tendency to have the back against the wall in literal terms, but also in metaphoric terms, and do CYA policies and make sure that everybody is on board and do the extra round. And then maybe this can also become, it's a belief, but under pressure can become into a derailer. I mean, who of you works with beliefs? Okay, so that's pretty much the large majority, so you know how to do that. Great. Menschenbild, idea of man. Not sure if that is the 100% perfect translation. If you have a better one, please let me know. But it's really the idea, what is my concept of humanity? Yeah. In that particular case, I'm more referring to how do I see other people, yeah? And especially to have a discussion about, are other people resources to achieve my goals? Or are other people in their own right, which have a right for development, which have the basic needs and everything, and they happen to be in my team, and I have a responsibility to develop them, and they should reach my goals. Yeah? And to have a discussion around what do I want from people, and that is for some people not so meaningful because they really have a solid thinking about that, and for others this is, okay, they are not resources? What do you mean? I mean, it's for them really a totally new thing. Especially when you come from consulting, I think. I mean, in my experience, I come from consulting, you are trained that people are resources. And you need a project, and you need some staff, and you staff them, and you look on skills, and then you have the skills, and actually we had a saying there, you need a brain on a stick. Yeah, that's all you need. You need a brain on a stick to do that. And so there's a very much not humane way of looking at people, and depending on which industry you come from, that might be more the case than others. What are you setting yourself up to do? Vision. I mean, what do you want? You can label this as the tombstone thing or as the retirement speech, but you can also, what are you there for? What is the difference that you are making? I think that's also very powerful in this context, and it can serve as something like a principle of saying, I've made the decision that this is the vision, and I'm going to make an impact in that direction, and hence, these are my actions to achieve that. Yeah, so I think vision, there's always a risk that this is shallow. Yeah, and the art is really to link the vision into the coaching and always bring it back and say, okay, now you said this is what you're going to do. How does that fit to your vision? How does that fit to your values? How does that fit to your beliefs? And just make the linking that this is not compartmentalized in your brain or wherever, but that it really makes sense. I think that is the art then of coaching, to really weave that into another. Principles. Now, principles is not an academic term, but it is really something where I've seen it helpful for people to say, this is a decision I have made. This is not a decision that has been done by my child, in my inner child, and I'm just living it. This is a decision that the adult person has done, and this is a decision I stick to. What's a good example? I made the decision, personally, that I will not optimize my life for tax purposes. That's a very fundamental decision. And that's a decision I did, and I'm sticking to that. And there might be others. I'm working with one, she's a freelancer, and she made the decision that she will never again work alone. Even if the client wants price reductions, she would not do it alone. And that's a decision. And if the decision is strong enough, you would go there and say, if you don't want me, or if you don't want my service, then because I'm too expensive, then that's fine. I don't feel grief or anything, because I wouldn't want it anyways if it was different. So what are your Leitplanken in German, hard shoulders in English? Yeah. So what are your hard shoulders? What limits your road? You can be flexible, but there's a limitation. And what are your limitations? What are you not willing to compromise on? And drivers. So drivers' beliefs. This is pretty much.
Come to transactional analysis.
Yeah. Different school of thought, but what is it that is actually driving you forward? So having a discussion around that, in my world, forms something like a leadership posture that a manager wants to have. And this is a different discussion maybe depending on which level a manager is. But if somebody is a first-time manager, this might be a totally new way of thinking. At the end of the day, you mentioned the SCARF model. One of the key things that makes leaders or people in general resilient against stress is the feeling that they can influence what's happening to them. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that you can influence. All the outside world is hard to influence sometimes, but this is the stuff that you can actually influence, that you can make a choice. And every step in that direction increases your self-efficacy, as it says, Selbstaktualisierung, Selbstwirksamkeit. Yeah? So this is something that's an active measure to making people more resilient. So this is more like an envelope for interventions. Yeah, you can do many, many things in here, but it really is about designing who you want to be as a manager, as a leader, and you can get lost in these definitions of the terms. I don't even want to go there. All right. So we also talked a little bit about resources, but not so much. So there's something where you need to have a look at what is your resource level? What is the resource level of your client? And the work on resources is actually, it's not scientific by any means, right? It's pretty basic. I would suggest some differentiations, though. In my world, or in our world, there's 4 different sorts of resources, to be a bit more specific. So one resource is the roots. So anything that's kind of earthy, that goes into the ground, that gives you stability, that helps you to get stress out of your body, to kind of ground yourself, sich erden. Yeah? So that would be one type of resources. There's another type of resources which is wings. So anything that brings up your energy when you are in front of a difficult situation, where you know you need to face a conflict, where you know you need to be engaging with your team, or you speak in front of a big audience. What can you do to bring up your energy? And in many cases, people have strategies for that, but not so much for this. Yeah? And to develop this, that's a given, right? I mean, many managers do some sort of sports, go for a walk. I've heard cases where people go shopping. Or have a phone conversation with a friend, you know, many things. This year is another sort of resources that one can think about. What is actually something that gives me energy, not to relax, but to really energize me? Yeah? And sometimes when you work on the phone, it's important to stand up rather than sitting. It's important to run around to really get energy and to feel the energy in your body. Or some people, they listen to AC/DC before they go to some sort of meetings to get some connection to more, to more basic needs. Yeah? Then there is something that I would label neutral in terms of resources. It doesn't give you energy. It also does not necessarily prevent you from losing energy, but is something to organize yourself. Structure. Something, you were probably willing to agree that some sort of structure, some sort of tricks and tips may help you to not lose so much energy. Yeah? Have some sort of, even if you're not a structured person, make a decision that you will do this in particular way or fashion. And this can be, for different people, it can mean totally different things. Yeah, I mean, it's the question of what do you do yourself, what you have somebody else doing it for you, for example, or when do you file your expense reports, or what you do with emails, how often do you read them? I mean, this is very technical stuff. And this is how do I go about energy thieves? Yeah, so people that you will all know them. When you leave their room, you feel worse than when you entered their room, or other way around. So how do you go about them? What's your strategy? How do you go about them? How do you minimize the impact? Do you take people along, so that you're not alone at least? Do you use the phone rather than the face-to-face conversation? Do you go for lunch with them or meet in the office? And these are all things worth thinking about. And I mean, in some people have like one or two that are really, really severe, and what do you do with them? And resources are very individual. But there I find it helps sometimes to have a list of ideas where sometimes the coachee doesn't have the idea. And you can really say, you know, I've worked with people that like this sort of music, or they use this particular image as a resource, or they made sure that they went in the forest like twice a week, something like that. And then maybe, yeah, that's for me, or no, but I would go swimming. Oh, swimming is good. Okay, so make note of that. So then this is, I mean, a collection. This is just another differentiation to look at resources and make it a bit more separate in different columns for what kind of energy do I need which resource, and how can I integrate that into my life? How can I stabilize myself? We talked about relationships a little bit, and the fact, you can ask yourself the question, why is it that a concept that was established in '86 by Wolfgang Loos, coaching in Germany, how is it that this concept is now so popular? If you look around in SAP, it's the archetype company in terms of having an internal coaching culture. Why is that? Why it is so popular? And I think one potential reason is that there is a lack of relationships where you can be your true self. I would make the claim that if there were more people that had relationships where they can be their authentic self, you wouldn't need a coach. However, it is how it is, and there is some research on so-called critical leader relationship. It needs a 3-letter acronym for some sort of reason, so it is a CLR. So how do, and this is typically about C-level people, but still, I think it holds valid. The higher you go up in the hierarchy, the less natural you are prone to have these relationships. And what it reads here is, so what's the numbers? It's 2,700 international executives interviewed by Nicholson and Björnberg, London Business School. And what they found was, of this 2,700, 47% had a CLR higher in the hierarchy. That's what we normally would consider a mentor, informal, official mentor. Some had, that's 22% lower in hierarchy, so that would be like a trusted employee, somebody that maybe follows you throughout your career over many steps. That's part of your Kielwasser, not sure what that is in English. Then same level, so this would be like, I don't know, maybe a business friend, yeah, something like that. 9% outside of the organization. This would be us. Well, this would be me. You would be inside the organization, so you would be anywhere here. And then 8% no CLRs, and that's the sad conclusion of that. These 8% are typically the C levels. Yeah. So a lot of the 2,700 that were C levels actually had no CLR, meaning they had nobody where they could communicate to without playing some sort of a role. Because, I mean, we all talk about authenticity and how important it is to be authentic. Now, if you are driving a function, or if you're driving a small company, and you know, and you have heard discussions, you have overheard discussions in the management team above, that the unit is about to be closed or not, depending on how the numbers are. You have to make a conscious choice. Do you disclose this information to your team? We are on the edge of being closed, of being shut down or not. Or there is a coaching magazine, there's a very interesting article with Peter Bauer, who used to be the ex-CEO of Infineon, and then stepped back because of osteoporosis, and now is a coach. And he said, there's a nice example where he said, there was 2009, all the numbers were going down, and we were 1 billion short in cash, and we needed to refinance, and all refinancing discussions were blowing up. Do you then go to your team and say, hey, we may need to shut down the business because we cannot refinance? I mean, the question is always, what is really there in terms of authenticity? And I think it is just a plain illusion to say you need to be authentic. You need to be 100% authentic. I think there's always, I know that I'm now, putting a stick in a bean schwarm, whatever, but that's my map of the world. If you are in senior management and you strive for 100% authenticity, you are either the boss of the entire show or gone. Yeah, and finding the right way.
Well, then it's a harnessness.
Yeah. So finding the right way. Yeah. How much can you be authentic? But where do you show your fears? Where do you show your doubts? Is it fair to say to your team, I have no clue what to do? Is that fair? I think that's the real question. Or is it fair to say, hey, the management has decided we do this, but actually I don't believe it? If that is authentic, is that fair? I think that is also a question that one has to answer as a leader. How to position yourself and really think it through a bit more than, yes, we all want to be, walk the talk and we all want to be authentic. What's really there? And sometimes the role of a leader is to stand there and contain the fact that you cannot disclose all the information. That's part of the role. And before we go too far into the authenticity discussion, the point I'm actually trying to make is that it is important to have somebody to talk to in plain language. Yeah? And the higher you climb, the less likely you are to have those people around you. And the more it becomes important to foster those relationships, make time in your calendar, make sure that you talk to your best friend, make sure that you have a, and if it is a business friend or somebody that shares the same faith, make sure that you build trust and have something where you can really have a foundation where you can exchange feelings. And especially when you come to higher levels, sometimes the need is to go outside of the organization, and hence coaching and all of that. But what is also coming, that's a trend that we are seeing, is that mentoring networks are coming, where that are cross-company, where you have like executives from different organizations being connected, linked with each other, and they bring their people along, and they get mentored, and they get exchanged, because there's a value in these critical leader relationships. And I think this is a bit of the resilience part, but since transitions are prone to be stressful, that can be very helpful as well. So that's one way to really tangibly make this operational. And that brings us to integration, which is, I think, more tactical. The groundwork has been done. You have scanned the environment, you have scanned your inner world of the coachee, what's going on. You have planned what the person wants to achieve in the 90 days, in the first year, what are quick wins. You have worked on the stuff where decisions need to be made in terms of your posture, what do you want to stand for as a leader, how do you want to go about situation when the going gets tough. And now this is really about, okay, we are in there, we are maybe 80 days, 90 days, 100 days, and counting, and then I'm reviewing what's going on, what has happened with your plan, what has worked, what has not worked, how is your energy level, and there's different ways really to do that. And I suggest this is rather quick. We go through that, and then we have it, and then we do a coffee break. Is that okay? Can you hold on?
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very simple. You know all how that works. You have a plan. Okay, plan is nice. It's paper or PowerPoint. But what about reality? So what has worked? What has not worked? Where you need to change the angle? Where do you need a different approach? What's going on? Pretty straightforward, but important. And then always link it back to vision, values, principles, decisions. Make it experienceable. What is working, what is not working, how can I improve? And then, I'm not sure if you actually use that, so that would be an interesting discussion. In our practice, we work in also as a, who is native? What's that? A hearing tube, funnel, whatever. So something where you can amplify your hearing, okay?
A bullhorn.
A bullhorn, thank you.
That's megaphone.
That would be a reverse bullhorn.
The hearing aid.
Yeah,
Hearing aid, yeah.
a pretty ancient hearing aid, maybe. I don't even know the
Hearing
term.
aid, but in the form of a megaphone. Maybe.
Yeah. So, normally in a coaching setting, you work one-on-one with the coach. In the external world, that's okay. In the external world, when we work with clients, normally you have something like a discussion with the manager, the L&D person from HR, the coachee and the coach, and you design what you're going to do there. So that's either a 6-eye conversation or an 8-eye conversation, or however you want to call it. What we also do is, we as coaches, we become kind of a sonar or a radar after a time to check how is that particular manager doing. So you could call it a 360 feedback, which is a bit overstating the thing, but it's matter of fact, it is one where we say, okay, are you interested in getting some data points on how you are perceived? And you can, I'm not sure if you can do that as internal coaches, but it would be maybe interesting to think about it. Would you be able to say, hey, after 6 months down the road, why don't I call 4 of your people that you have informed that I will call them, and I'll have a conversation with them, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, how is he doing? How is she doing? What are strengths, weaknesses? how would you describe her leadership style using a metaphor? It's always my favorite question. And assuming that person would further develop, how would the metaphor change? And then you get all kinds of animals, sports, military, movie figures, and all of that. But that's some data points that you can then feed back into the coaching process, and that typically the coachee would never learn if they ask the questions to that particular person. What's my stress and energy level? There's tons of ways how to measure that. I suggest a very simple way, which is comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone. Where are you? And there's probably many other good things, but this is one way where you know exactly, okay, I'm 80% in panic zone and 20% in learning zone and 0% in comfort zone, then you know that you have a problem. And then you can talk about why and how can you change that and how long are you going to survive this. And, depending on how much red there is, that can be an important conversation. Are there other tools? How would you measure energy? You can use scale from 1 to 10. How full is your battery? 100% is full. Battery questions. Other interventions, questions that you use? How is your battery right now on a scale from 1 to 10?
Rather low.
Rather low. Okay, so one more. You got it. Okay. So this was the raft of interventions. By no means complete, and it is rather a structure than a complete list. You can add your own stuff. You should add your own stuff. I'm not sure about you, but in my trainings that I did, I learned maybe, 60 interventions, and out of the 60 interventions, I'm using 5. And those are mine. But out of the 5, I have 5 different subtypes of this intervention and different, and it's not about learning the stuff by heart, it is more making it yours and look at what gravitates to you and then work with that.